Good evening. Welcome to the September 13th Village Board Work Session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You want to switch around seats there, folks? Okay. I'll just take a moment to acknowledge that on Monday, several of us were down at the waterfront for the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. It's a really beautiful service that is organized by the Ossining Fire Department. I believe they partner with the Briarcliff Manor Fire Department for that event. It's all the first responders from our communities and officials, and really it's just an opportunity for us to share to give thanks to everyone who does put themselves in harm's way. Just to share, it's Sarah, they only all the folks in the community. Next year are we on it? Great, at 7 p.m., probably a Tuesday or something next year. Speaking of the human spirit, which comes out in a crisis that could horrible or webinar that officials and officials from here, and just the week before, I've been participating with the town and the chief of police, with folks from the county, talking about how we would prepare of the magnitude 3 times that we experienced with Sandy, and you can never be too prepared. And as horrible as the devastation was in Houston, a couple of what's going on.
Well, music and the world class at the starting up again Saturday, and we have bands booked all the way through to June of next year. So every second Saturday at the Elks Lodge, there will be live jazz music, and some CD and
phones, and I'll give all the information this time. It was pointed out to me after I mentioned this last week. I didn't tell anybody the name of the film or the subject, so I'll start with that. The film is called Awake, and the subject is Standing Rock. Many folks will recall the very powerful acts of of the folks who live in that area, looking out for their environment and so much more. And it's a very moving film. I hope you'll join us. It is Thursday, so tomorrow, the 14th of September. And as always, it is free to the public. The program begins at 6:30. You can go ahead and show up at 6:15, get a good seat, and it's at the Ossining Public Library in the Boudars Theater. And one more, Green Ossining, which you can just go to greenossining.org to get all the details. But this is at least the third community tag sale. They now have a semi-annual community tag sale. If you have been thinking about having a tag sale, go ahead and sign up to be one of the homes, and they will help folks know about it. And then you can, if you're somebody who likes to visit tag sales, then mark your calendar for October 7th, and you can just drive all around Ossining and find some real treasures from your neighbors. And would you like to get first?
We have
Instead, it's Mike. Thanks.
Welcome.
do it. Okay. That's it. And age. As well. But we had been working since our library choice and that we featured. We did 90% of what it is that we asked for in that structure. And then what we did is we oriented. So, so I guess what do I do? I just move?
The mouse.
Oh.
The mouse is
Up with you.
Oh, okay,
scroll
cool.
down the center.
Okay. I just do that. Okay, cool. I guess I can't pace the way I like to pace because I'll lose the microphone. Yes? Okay. So you will get a caged animal sense from me. But we initially organized ultimately here in Ossining from the library with 245 community leaders to really build what our objectives were as communities with respect to consumer benefit and as well with respect so that development of aggregation. I know that it's our job, and you never do enough, period, no matter what. It's our job to inform folks, to give people a sense of fear. Liver at environment. Go over the crew and that development It's local generation. It's the ability to actually shore up as well as service a good contract leaders. It's really this is what we and municipal attorneys. And these are the results. And it is so what we struck as to whatever it is that we developed was if it didn't save, consumers could opt out, go right back to the utility, and if it did, the fixed it the utility fixed over the rates now begin to piece fixed, but we soon happen up first for consumer now June, I guess the October, November. It's to $16 and that's uh, as competency in the renewable generation infrastructure. That's what we build. That's our development. We are a for-profit company, and that is 100% of our mission. And we want to build irrigation in the first place. And so what we have been doing is working with the Department of Public Service. We have gathered roughly 3 for ultimate the elect in the state. Um, this such savings on utility rates for as long as 20 years. And that's for entirely local solar generation. And so this community distributed generation, we can provide certificates on everyone's bill, and the reduction on that bill is always 100% of the time greater than the surcharge. So that's a critical opportunity that we can deploy as of Austening's next contract. And we're proposing that you consider deploying that benefit for your residents. Now, it isn't going to be for 100% of the power they purchase. It's going to be for that portion of the power that ends up being locally generated solar generation. So the certificates will start with a small certificate, and then those certificates will get larger through the years, such that at some point, certainly the early towns that get in can be doing close to 100% renewable quite quickly. The later towns, we're going to have a shortage of supply. Potentially, we're going to have to do a heck of a lot more development to get to those enhanced levels of renewables. But it's our proposal that as of this next contract, that the early communities decide that we want to perhaps roll over precisely the current structure of our contract, perhaps even with the same supplier, with an improved, more safe contractual structure, which is informed by our learnings over the last couple of years, and then introduce certificates every 3 months, which reduce supply and a guaranteed savings over the utility rate for the next 20 years if they'd like. And that's a critical focus of what it is that we're doing. And buying you be already in billions, but this renewable and 20 years. That's our uh, only pilot here authority very team are kind of looked at our this stand uh, ability to one get.
Or what? We up first. Trust. Stand. And
That-
when with folks in to every municipality and this is the county. The great I said segregation started. Positive. The an adequate job preparing people for what then, you know, in the absence changes. Inflate your bill. Yeah. They actually say loud. This for people. Because it's the way that it can succeed, and there are 6 states that up to that point had allowed for some version of it before we were able to get New York State to allow it here. And we were really grateful that we were able to take such a strong position that we have 100% renewable energy for anybody who just defaults into the Con Ed local service. You can certainly have an ESCO and do it your own way. And then people had the option, if they wanted Con Ed to be the entity that goes to the energy market and purchases energy, whatever source it comes from, you could opt back to that. If you did nothing and you were already a Con Ed customer, then your energy would be coming from 100% renewable sources. And the group that was going to the market was this consortium of municipalities that calls itself Westchester Power, which is organized by the Sustainable Westchester. Mike represents one of the private sector entities that's been part of this collaboration, this consortium from the beginning. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah,
Mike? I'm trying to bring Debbie and anybody who's just
Absolutely.
paying attention for the first time up to speed.
And
here.
the only thing that I should say is that that first year and a half was I was acting as chair, then co-chair of Sustainable Westchester. We did everything gratis. So that year that I spent working on this, totally gratis, just focused on developing this, period.
So is your ask at this point, right now, if we just continue with the status quo, then Sustainable Westchester will go out to the market. They'll get a new contract. They'll renew the contract. The contract is we're only midway through the 2-year contract. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
May 1st.
Okay. So if we were just in, then there's nothing that we need to do. But what you're suggesting is because New York State immediately after this became an option for us and we opted to do it, New York State then opened up the opportunity for anybody in the state to participate as a municipality and then any entity to be a community choice aggregator. And you are now a community choice aggregator in the same way that Sustainable Westchester has been. And the way our law is currently written, it is written narrowly because it was written for the Sustainable Westchester opportunity, because that's all that was on the table when we wrote the law. So the question you're asking us now is, are we interested in broadening the language of our law? That would be the first step before we could consider
Yeah, and
any
then due
alternative.
diligence. And we could easily have precisely the same contract, even precisely the same supplier extended. That wouldn't be an issue. That process would be precisely the same as if you were engaging again, continued with Sustainable Westchester. In fact, I think were you to deploy us, we would then reach out to Sustainable Westchester to provide services that would look just precisely the same in our view.
So why is Sustainable Westchester not here and doing the exact same thing? Because you've worked with them for so many years. So can you tell us, is there a rift? Is there some big backstory here we need to know about?
Not really. I mean, why aren't they doing the same thing, or why aren't they partnering in a unified piece?
I guess that's it.
So I'll answer it in terms of doing the same thing. It has taken they've done a fine job at the base of that pyramid. Very supportive on the base of that pyramid. But it takes a heck of a lot of focus and energy and dedication with respect to the Department of Public Service, the Public Service Commission, the New York Independent. This had service where they've had 14 people on the phone, and then we ask them a question on how something works, and they start arguing with each other, and they say, no, that's not the way it works. And then they say, can we have this meeting again in a week because we need to get on the same page? And that's the kind of collaborative stuff that you need to be having with the regulatory agencies to make this work and to drive this towards the potential for sustainability and economic development. And so we've done that work. That's our business, and we're doing it on behalf of 300,000 homes throughout New York State. And that's hard work, and it's separate work from the basic administration of a program once that program is going. It's very different work. And we really do feel, I think Dan Welsh and team is a superstar with respect to That's right, to Westchester Power. I think they've done a great job administering that. And so ultimately, should you deploy us, we would deploy them. Now, why aren't they doing it? Why aren't they coming here with a unified offering? I think they're scared. I think the board itself is scared. I think it's a lot easier to just kind of move something over and say, eventually we'll get there and we'll kind of do more of the same, and people will opt into solar, and and supercharging the solar market is something that maybe I again don't do this great job of explaining it, and we have to demonstrate that it's going to be a lot easier this time.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that Westchester Power has kind of taken it to a certain point, but that there's more. We get that now. We could.
Absolutely.
So,
Oh, zone that avoided transmission, avoided value, the rev it, a value. Everyone who's traction I a penny ticket. It's place have to a good solid penny a kilowatt hour. So it reduces the rate of renewables because for them to finance a power plant, they need a contract on the other side. Well, yeah, that allows them to this result to expand local renewable generation so dramatically.
So recently I had a chance to have lunch with the new village manager, and we sat down and talked about one of the things that I'm really hot about is renewable energy in the village. You know, we have a lot of buildings, and we have a lot of buildings with a lot of exposure to light. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to see the envelopes of the structures improved and taken care of, and then I want to put solar panels on everything. So does that qualify as what you're talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
Okay.
one of our other
So because the way I look at it is with because we're locking in to a rate, like whoever we buy our energy from, we're going to put our energy back into the grid, right? I mean, there's really, that's the way it works. The way it works in my home. I'm the poster child for Energize Ossining. I was one of the first people who did my home, and I put the solar panels on my roof, you know, and I have a fixed contract for 20 years. I know exactly how much I'm going to spend on my electricity for the next 20 years. And if anybody who's hearing my voice now isn't thinking about that, you should be. Because if you just look at that graph that this gentleman just showed you, you can see that, guess what? The cost of energy and electricity is going up. It's inevitable. And if you can lock in your price, like I locked in my price for 20 years. So I want to do the same thing for the village. So what this says to me is that if we become an energy producer, we can not only get the benefit of the savings in our village budget because we have a locked-in rate for electricity, but you're saying these certificates could help us in aggregation to help lower the cost for electricity for people in the program. Is that correct?
yes, and so that's absolutely something rent for that solar installation.
Oh, they can pay us?
Yes.
Oh, too bad. I'm liking this more every day.
Yeah, and it's
Well, I'm
yeah,
trying
and
to,
it's
I'm
a
trying to make it really
yeah.
simple because if we put it into a way where people go, oh, okay, so that's how it works.
Yep.
This is tough to make simple.
It's
so
it's
thank
not
you, yeah.
well, it's not, you know, this isn't sexy, okay, but I'm telling you right now that if we can lock in energy costs in this village for the next 20 years, the savings to everybody's property taxes are going to be huge, and we'll be able to use those dollars to do other things, for services, for infrastructure, for the other things that everybody wants in our village. And we can keep everybody's taxes down. And that's huge for me. And I, you know, when I saw this, I got very excited. So I'm really interested in your proposal, very much so.
Trustee Quesada, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have several questions. Because someone from the program that we sign up did a presentation about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. She came in, did a whole presentation in regards to this and the rates and everything else. So, just to your point, John, far as and correct me if I'm wrong, please, Proby Stewart. But the village itself does not qualify for this program. I thought it was for the residents, because we buy our power through a different entity.
Correct.
So when you're talking about putting solar panels and getting money back, we don't qualify for this. The village residents does. That was my understanding.
Yeah, so let me explain how it would work. So if you put a solar panel on, let's say, a parking lot, right? And you've got a whole set of there that you the you and say the certificate you know,
That was not part of the whole program itself. So that's what I wanted. What I'm trying to think right now is a company from.
okay.
8,000.
Are about New York worth of when the problematics, and as well there are municipalities in Jersey and prospectively in Massachusetts that are going to be engaged in the bid.
You didn't say anything in Westchester yet. Did you?
Um,
Or did I miss?
There are municipalities in Westchester that are diligencing this, and I do expect that there will be a number. I don't want to, you know,
No, you don't
how
have to say
aggressive,
names. No, you
yeah,
don't
but
have to
how
say
aggressive we go is a question of we want to make sure that, you know, once we can demonstrate how powerful and valuable this is, I think that it will be done ubiquitously throughout Westchester County. So I'm being intentionally less ambitious with Westchester County because I really would just like to demonstrate it and have the several communities that do engage demonstrably benefit so that the rest of Westchester County picks it up and it becomes a sustainable Westchester program once again. But, you know, that's my goal, to demonstrate that we can do more with cleaner power.
So, and Victoria, you picked that up, and part of what we got about 1.5 years ago when we started working on this, and we pretty much we became part of this program. We did hear a lot about the community saying, you know, why is the government trying to push to us to do something that, you know, they didn't see the value in a lot of the items in here. So, I guess that's my concern. They're going to another entity to try to do something. So I want to make sure that the difference in the pros and cons are there, And I agree with John. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can, as a municipality, we can do as being more green. I think.
Yeah, and I
the-
think the critical pro, because we can talk about the fact that people will be paid for their smart thermostats. We can talk about, you know, other features of the program, which I can get into, but I think the critical pro is that at this point, we can offer solar certificates to 100% of the participants, and we can offer guaranteed rates that are guaranteed every single month to be lower for that portion of folks' bills than the utility bill. Guaranteed, long
So
term.
what happens to, and please, you know, explain this to me, because I know part of the contract is that we are right now, people who have, like John has a solar roof, pretty much, they don't qualify to be part of the program itself. Is it different with what you're offering?
There's if people do solar power that covers 100% of their consumption, they would not be a participant in this, akin to what John is describing. If what he's got is a roof that covers 100% of his bill, then he's really, I mean, maybe if he buys a kilowatt hour here and there, he'll save half a penny. But it won't be, you know, folks can still be doing the individual solar on their own building. They could, in theory, sign up with somebody else who offers them community solar from some deal, which if they chose to. But this would just mean that the village was offering folks 100% of the participants would be offered a certificate, which would save them money.
Can you give us a timeline for when any next steps and decisions would need to be made? Because I'm sure there's going to be more questions that we have after this, and we could probably continue this conversation for a lengthy time, but
I do have one question.
please.
Are you the only company that can guarantee these certificates?
No, nobody said we love it. Correct. With the structure of what it is that you're doing. I'm sure that others will figure it out. That'd be great. It'll create this vibrant environment, which is exactly why I'm not suggesting that you change your law and write Joule into your law. I'm suggesting that you change your law to give you the flexibility to work with, whether it's Sustainable Westchester or Joule or who knows who else, that you have a law that gives you flexibility as a municipality. It won't look any different. Folks are still going to be dealing with maybe even the same energy supplier. I'm just suggesting a smarter law.
All right, so Stuart, essentially, if we wanted to change the law to allow for competition, in the best summary of words, we wouldn't actually have to make a decision of whether to go with Joule or anybody. It's just making a law to allow for competition.
Right.
Okay.
Currently, what you have is that the Village of Ossining shall work together with Sustainable Westchester.
Which is very specific. Okay, so it's making the law more broad so that, and which makes sense because this is a new and evolving industry and opportunity for us. So that would be the next logical step. Meanwhile, we could be doing our due diligence and talking to, you know, Westchester Power and Sustainable Westchester and figuring out kind of where their heads are at as well, and come back with a recommendation and more deep discussion about how to move forward. There must be a timeline, though, a date certain by which a decision has to be made, because folks, we have a Westchester Power contract that will be
We
wrapping
are
up.
going out to bid at the end of this year and in Q1 of next, so we can dovetail it with, so you make the decision this year, you're in fine shape. And the only thing that, so we'd suggest we would draft
Yeah, like.
easy way to
You know
do it
who
is
you're dealing
just
with over here, you know?
is just take Sustainable Westchester and say administrator of its choice.
Right.
You know, that would be the easy way. And then the only other changes, there are a couple of changes that we would suggest that you wouldn't have to make. one change is that instead of resting on this pilot authority, which no longer exists, it would rest on the actual April 21st statewide.
I think we're getting into the weeds here a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you
But
could
the other
send-
thing that is less weeds is that you could choose to write your law in such a manner that a neighborhood could go 100% renewable.
Oh,
And then another neighborhood could go 100% renewable. And then another one
okay.
at its
So that's
purview.
something that you'll provide to Stuart, and he'll make sense of for us
We'll
and
touch
help
base,
us
sure.
figure out. Yeah, okay. Any last questions before we move on for tonight?
So
anyway?
how long will it take to write the law?
Elegant or inelegant?
As long as it's legally sound.
We'll be fine.
So,
Yeah, because we'll just, again, as the mayor pointed out, the Chapter 10 that was put into effect in 2015 is specific to Sustainable Westchester. So we would just make it more a generic term at that point, but I'll be happy to touch base and we can go from there.
Well, thank you very much.
Total
Michael
pleasure.
Gordon.
Thanks for having me.
It was lovely to have you.
Really appreciate it.
All right, Debbie, keep us on task here
Okay.
as well as we can.
Our next item is the cabaret license, and I'm going to try to pronounce. Isla. Of
Mayor, I have the chief here. This is an application for a cabaret license. There was also an application for refreshment and coin-op. The refreshment and coin-op licenses have been issued.
Good.
So we are here just with regard to the cabaret license. There was a building inspection. Initially, it had failed, but on August 31st, that was passed. And the chief is here to discuss from the police perspective.
For an application. One of the companies the indication I have is that whatever business had been there in the past is still associated with what they're doing going forward. Our response to the application was an indication that we are not in support of this permit being granted. Part of the reason was a long history of police activity there. What's not shown on the data that was given to you is 8 or 9 significant calls for service there since the time that that application's been reviewed. Most recently, last week, there was an assault outside of the bar, resulting in an arrest for assault in the 3rd degree, a misdemeanor crime. There's a number of other civil disputes, criminal mischief, village ordinance violations, disturbances, noise complaints, and it's in line with all of the things we've been experiencing year after year after year. So in this case, I would have objection to this application being granted.
They don't currently have a cabaret license, sure.
That's right. One of the big concerns that we have is that when you have a cabaret, this is a means of encouraging more people to come there. I know that one of the village ordinance violations that was issued on August 27th was for exceeding their maximum occupancy. Being 89 people, they stopped counting at 127. So to my knowledge, it just doesn't make sense why you would want to present permits for something that would encourage more. It's a dangerous situation when you have overcapacity.
Just to let the board know, the facility currently has a temporary liquor license issued by the State Liquor Authority. That's as a result of the new operation. That license, they're ending with the
In the per. That. Few license. We want them to be successful and to do whatever they can to encourage more people to come and to, frequent our local businesses. So it's tough to say no to someone who's trying to expand their business. That said, I'm listening to everything that the chief is saying, and it doesn't sound like they're having trouble getting people to come. That's one thing that they're succeeding at least on some occasions. I seem to recall that there are two businesses side by side on this block, correct? Am I mixing up my businesses?
Probably thinking about the Karma Lounge around the corner. But no, they're
No,
You're thinking of Jared's Tropicalis.
I am.
you think, yeah. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
So-
Thank you.
On Croton Avenue,
Main
we'd
Street
reviewed a
behind.
number of cabaret applications all at one time in the past, and one of the things that we did during that time is we'd invited all of the business owners to come to the police station. We met with them and we discussed ways that they could improve their businesses and how we can work with them. I don't recall who the person was that came from what was then Adahi's, but that invitation stands open to all of our local business owners if they're interested in improving their business and finding ways that they can reapply for a permit in the next cycle. We're glad to work with them. We want to promote local business. We'd like to see this business succeed. The one thing that I can say is that it's been systematic with this particular establishment, that it's been a problem, and it's a complaint that we receive fairly regularly from the neighbors around that business as well in the morning.
What are the complaints that you're getting in the morning from the neighbors?
Generally just that there's trash and dirt.
Anybody else want to ask questions? Any comments?
Yeah, I don't have too many comments. I think I would I'm just of the mind that they don't have and that maybe back in activity.
I think the back to
2014.
yeah,
Also.
back to 2000. No, I'm going to give the date. So back to 2014. But that's a lot of activity, and there's multiple calls every month. It's not. My feeling is that the owners or the premises. And this is other business, same thing. If you can improve the situation and create to have 120 people in a space that's only supposed to have 89, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the management of the entering and exiting of patrons and the possible safety of not only the people in the establishment, but the safety of the first responders and anybody else that might have to go and take care of that situation. So I am not of a mind to approve this request until we see an improvement in the behavior of your patrons and the behavior of the management of the business.
Chief, I just want to be clear. Premise checks, that's just your basic run through, right? Like most of the bars in the
Yes, except for one thing to keep in mind is that when you see an establishment that has a regular pattern of premise checks that you see multiple times throughout the night, that's an indication that that place has been deemed as necessary to check several times throughout the night as a maintenance to keep it from becoming a problem. Whereas 16 Croton Avenue, and there's nobody here at night, it's still a premise check that we would do, but we're not coming here expecting to find a problem. When you see 4 or 5 checks throughout a night, it means we're going there simply to prevent problems from happening. That's proactive policing as opposed to reactive. I can tell you what's happened when the premise checks don't go on is that you're more likely to see problems when there's not a police presence in front of a place like this.
But just to be quite
To be clear, the reports that are generated that indicate, because there's probably hundreds of premise checks a year at this location, each of those individually is not a call for service. It's maintenance to keep things in order.
So the owners of this establishment are here now, so we know that they can take away a message, an understanding of what would you recommend as Trustee Codman was pointing out and as Trustee Bazemore acknowledged, they have a temporary liquor license right. Well, they're made come through.
Expect that.
Since it is fun for that I is a chart of the business owner. What would you recommend to the business owner if they would like to have the opportunity to be heard differently the next
Sure.
time?
So for any business owner that comes in that wouldn't be permit or that would midnight. So there's been a very history. So I'm not sure if it's a lack of communication on their part or our part. I know that our communication is oftentimes in the form of a summons. If that's not enough to stop things from happening, I don't know what is. But I'm of the mindset it's always time for to start fresh. So what's happened in the past shouldn't necessarily prevent us from moving forward, but I think it takes an affirmative effort to do that. So I'd encourage them to call my office and meet with us, and we'd be glad to set them up with some kind of plan to move forward and keep things in line. I think that there is a lot of danger in overcrowding an establishment, and one of the key concerns we have with a cabaret license is that it's going to encourage more people to come. What the mechanism is for sort of regulating that, I'm not sure what their plan would be, but that certainly would be something we'd have to talk about. Beyond that, there seems to be a pattern of a lot of the incidents we have relating to highly intoxicated people, which takes really good bartenders who are courageous enough to tell people that it's time to cut you off. All these things I think are good that we can work on, and I'm confident that if they choose to take our assistance, I think that we can have a successful partnership.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody else have more questions and comments on this? Or it sounds like if there's an opportunity to revisit it with any fresh perspective in a couple of months, then we'll review it at that point.
Thank you, Chief.
But unless, I feel like I'm hearing consensus that there's not support to move forward with granting a cabaret
I'm not
license
in
at this
favor.
time. Okay. I just want to make sure I was hearing correctly. All right. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is a discussion on the revision to Chapter 88, our brush, grass, and weeds. Stuart's been working on that very hard, and he's here to talk about that.
I have here a copy of the elegant the to responsible for keeping the grass and weeds and such on his or her property, below a certain height and clear. However, it does not extend to beyond the property line to the curb, or if there's no curb, basically to the street. The proposed change here effectively extends the property owner's responsibility to that area, which is consistent with our solid waste ordinance, which requires that the sidewalks be kept clear by the property owner. This would effectively require the property owner for what is considered otherwise public property to maintain it in the way, keep the grass cut, keep the weeds, get rid of poison ivy, get rid of all those different kinds of things. And if it is not taken care of after notice is given, another change would be that the village manager can direct the DPW to effectively go out and clear it. The property owner would then be given a period of time, would be given an invoice for the work that was done, be given a fairly short period of time to pay that invoice, and if not, that invoice would become a lien on the property as just with taxes. So it would essentially go that way. It would, the way the statute currently is that permission to remove anything from the property requires board approval, which, you know, felt that it was, you know, needless to have to keep coming back to the board to basically say, you know, cut your grass below 12 inches and do things like that. This way, the village manager is the one who can in fact make the direction that that has to be done and can be undertaken. Also, based upon a discussion that we had, currently the charge would be the amount of time for labor not, I mean, those should know is a fair enough to keep the property line street and just this is number of this also from the city of Rye and in Rybrook as well. So all of these, you know, basically, you know, make it easier. It also then would not be the requirement initially of DPW to do that work. It would become the owner's responsibility. And this would, again, we'd be consistent with our solid waste ordinance, and we'd, you know, simply make it, you know, incumbent upon the owner to keep those areas clean. We've gotten a number of complaints, particularly with properties along North Highland Avenue, with regard to, you know, overgrown weeds and things like that. And this way, those individuals can be so notified. And if they don't, this can obviously result in a violation. They would have 10 days to cure it. If they don't cure it, they can be, then they could conceivably be brought into court to get that taken care of. So that's the sum and substance of this, you know, particular change to Chapter 88. So to just, you know, broaden that out. And
Let me just clarify, they're given a 10 days to clean it up.
correct.
Otherwise,
After the 10 days, the village manager, I actually have it here, shall direct the superintendent of public works
okay,
to, or designee to have the grass, weeds, vegetation, et cetera, cut and removed.
we don't
Says
have to go to
it's-
court. That just happens.
That's
Okay,
right.
good.
Will that be 10 business days?
I have it here. I just have 10 days.
Okay.
I didn't put it, I didn't put in business days, which obviously would effectively make it 15 days. But because if it's really overgrown and stuff like that, I'd rather get it cut quicker rather than not. But the way it would work is that, you know, they're going to be notified either personally, or by certified mailers rules. Manager.
Question.
What is that before?
It's eat. I found this. Call it. Bring into your house. You know, and if your child brought it to you as a gift, you might say thank you very much and please put it outside. That's basically what it is. It's not if someone's growing tomatoes or things like that.
I just,
That
I,
is not
I
public.
just want to, I've never seen that,
Okay.
that particular phrase, so
You got
thank you
it.
for clarifying.
Any other questions? I'm afraid to ask. All right, so then I know you put this together relatively quickly. You had a lot of material to draw on. I thank you for doing that. I mean, you brought it to us, but the actual language. So is this something that we're ready to
Well,
call
what I
for a
would-
public
what I-
hearing next
I
week?
would propose is that next week we add to the agenda the call for the public hearing
Okay.
to be held 2 weeks thereafter, and then we can go from there. So that would be, the call for public hearing would be brought before the board next Tuesday night on the 19th.
Well, I know that our Public Works folks will be very happy to be able to have this tool to really enforce some of the frustrating nuisances that we have in our community, and it will certainly improve the quality of life for a number of our community members, in particular neighborhoods where this has been a challenge. So thank you very much for moving that forward.
Okay, we're
And
back
yes,
on
please do put it.
schedule.
I know we're doing
Good
great.
job. Our next topic is the proposed revision to Chapter 225, which is the solid waste. Again, Stuart has been working on this and has some information for you.
Okay, folks, thanks. The revision here is really more a discussion with the members of the board. You passed a fairly extensive change to Chapter 225 in 2016, which really covers what we're talking about. And over the past couple of weeks, I've been working with Jamie's assistants and with the folks at DPW to put together what effectively for these sort of to discuss is it include total amount instruction for payment of the amount. The key here from my discussion is the total amount of the fine or fines, because in the preceding section, which is 225.23, our penalties for offenses are not specific dollar figures. They are in fact ranges. So if it's your first offense, it's 150 to 250. Second offense, which is essentially within a 3-year period, 250 to 500, and third offense, 500 to 1,000. If our ordinance provides that we have to indicate the total amount of fines, you can't do that if in fact you've got a sliding scale. So one of the things that Debbie and I were discussing was that rather than in fact have to revise the ordinance, we simply, with the board, have a consensus as to what those fines could be for purposes of including them on the ticket, because we need to have a line for that. So in other words, if we felt that it was a first offense and we wanted to say $150, the court could always, if it felt necessary, if this got to court, do more. We could also put it the higher number, and the court, if they felt, could do less. It's the court's decision. But rather than, because as of right now, as I said, we're in a position where we really can't indicate what the fine is because the fine is a range, and what we're requiring is that the person issuing the ticket, whoever that is, has to check off what the fine's going to be. So rather than leave a discretion with that person, I'd like to have a specific number. So that's really, and my recommendation is that if the low number is 150, 250, 500, that could be our numbers for first, second, or third offense. The question did come up, as Debbie and I had, John, have 1 second, is how do you know it's a second offense? And that may be something that the individuals have to figure, will have to figure. Folks.
Yeah. So would we?
Public, if there is effectively fairly quickly. Again, another thing that's very important to both DPW and and the building folks, particularly DPW, gets specifically complaint. It's going to be issued, but it's done, is going to be the people who will be doing that. Because if we leave it just to our code enforcement folks, that's an extra thing that the code have other folks do that if we in fact think it's necessary. If we can put that, just a number in, I think that's better. I don't think it requires a text amendment at this point. My view now. I mean, court could come back and tell me I'm incorrect, but I don't think we need to do that.
So our task tonight is to select three numbers within each of these three ranges.
Right.
We could either just do the bottom of each one. We could do the 150 for the first offense, and then by the third offense, we could be at the top because those people have really ticked us off over the 3-year period. But really, we're just picking three numbers, and then you can go ahead and print these tickets. People
Correct.
start writing tickets.
That's exactly right.
So if I could just add a little bit to this, we were thinking also that we could put the minimum on it at 150, and perhaps we could have the checkbox if that person knew it was second, and what would be an additional fee for that, or check the third box. So we just want you to be comfortable with what the ticket says, so that if someone comes to you, you understand the way it's written out, so that if it's a first offense, that's what's printed on here, the minimum of 150. And then there would be a box that's checked for a second offense or a third offense. So if the writer knows that they've been to this place several times, they could go ahead and check that and tell the person ahead of time that they have to pay extra because they've been
So
adding on.
would that be designed in a way that if it's your third offense, there's going to be 3 boxes checked, or they're just going to go right to the third
They would
offense
just go
and
to
it's
the third one. So the
500
minimum
or
is
1,000?
150, and there would be 2 boxes, the second offense or a third offense.
And you're suggesting that we put
And with the
numbers
price,
next to
with-
the second and third box.
Right, and we would put the additional cost that goes with that, so that they would know what it is.
So instead of it saying first offense 150, second offense 250, it would say first offense 150, second offense additional
Additional
$100,
$100,
third offense additional $400.
$1,000.
$8 million. You're a bad person. Okay.
Right, but we just want them.
Something that. Let's see.
Yeah, the numbers came from our prosecutor who was involved in this, and his recollection is that they just took the range. But he also, when I raised the issue of how the violation is supposed to be worded, said his experience with the Justice Court is that it would be far better to have specific dollar amounts
Oh, sure.
on the ticket.
Right.
Because specifically, we are also going to provide them with a basis to pay. So if they're going to come, for example, to the ticket window at the court and pay, you got to give them an amount to pay.
Got it.
So we can't leave it up to the clerk to sort of come up with that.
So we're starting at the bottom at 150. Was there a range for the second?
250 to 5.
Okay, so maybe 1, 3, and 9 or something. I don't know. I'm kind of just throwing it out there.
1, 3, and 1,000.
Okay, whatever.
So 150, 300, and 1,000. Is that what you want to do?
That's just me.
Okay.
I think
The other
maximum
thing is,
500.
No, for the third offense, it's 500 to 1,000.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh,
But 500 more in the second offense.
correct. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I don't care which way you phrase it. Whatever's going to stand up in court.
Okay.
I just haven't seen the ticket.
I'll send it all around to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to
have
see
a
it. I mean,
mock-up
if we're
like
signing
this.
off on something, I would like to see.
Absolutely. I will send it over
Not
to you.
like
We've
I
got
don't
it.
trust you, Stuart. Please don't
Before you
give
get
me
No, no,
handed
no.
one.
Trust
Exactly. Like, oh, I know that I signed it. So.
You're authorized to write them. No, just kidding.
Oh,
No, but
No,
that's
I don't.
and that's my concern.
No.
And
I-
that's my
I-
concern. The coordination of if, let's say, a code enforcement goes in and he
Right.
checks the one box,
Mm-hmm.
and then somebody else from DPW goes in and goes to the same house a month later or so. That part, I think, the logistics of that is something that you guys have to work on it.
Correct.
But you- so
Well,
the humor of
To look at, and how are we? Those are the kind of,
I thought we did that already.
it
Well,
might be, but I haven't seen it.
Some of the,
Sorry,
for example, overweight garbage cans. The idea would be to have scales on the garbage truck so that the cans can be weighed. But you don't want to stop the route to get a code enforcement officer to come over and do it. So Debbie and I are talking about who's going to actually be the one who could write that. And how do you make sure that it's for that particular home where that trash can is located? So all those things are sort of mechanical things we
If
have
I
to work through.
remember part of the conversation that we had, part of the language, and I'm not sure if we changed that drastically, but even the police department was allowed to write the stop the summons on the
Yes.
weekends. So, you know, so it's this whole group of people.
Just so you know,
John wanted us to be able to write. the
well,
tickets.
actually, just so you know, the way it's provided is,
I think that was
it says, well,
previous member.
although, just so you know, the way it's written, the provisions of this chapter shall be enforceable by any police officer, building department director, building inspector, assistant building inspector, code, parking enforcement officer, park superintendent, foreman or ranger, public works superintendent or foreman, housing or fire inspector, animal control officer, and any other village title, position, or department director as may be delegated by the village manager.
Oh, so you could delegate anybody.
Correct.
So
Including-
it
including us.
could be
Could
us.
happen.
We could have our day.
Happen.
All right.
There will be a swearing in, and sign an oath.
Judge and
Okay,
jury right here.
So
There we go.
did we have consensus over the numbers?
So we have
put it
150, and then
together.
what would our next two if it's 150? Did we say 300 for the second?
I said 300. I don't know. If the,
So
Yeah,
is that,
that's
so
fine.
that means it's 300 more, right?
Right,
Well, no, I think you were saying 300 total.
correct.
yeah.
Oh,
It's 150 will be 150.
And then what do you want to do for the third offense?
It'll be $1,000 total. So
The mock-up.
And because owner who gets the ultimate, however, oh, do we have, we need a motion to go into executive session for the, what? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Here, and she does folks in and out at First Village last Friday, and she will thank you very much for reminding us, Trustee Quesada, this Saturday, the 16th, starting at 8:30 in the morning when the market opens. Debbie will be there until about noon. You can come down and get free roasted corn and meet the new village manager and introduce yourself and welcome her to Ossining. I hope you are feeling very welcome, Debbie.
I am feeling great.
Good,
Everybody's been so wonderful.
good.
I really appreciate all the warm welcomes. Am I going to be at a specific place at the market, or just right in the middle? Just sort of. Do I wear a hat?
Whatever you want, Debbie. Well,
All right, I like that.
so come on down to the village, to the farmer's market this Saturday, the 16th, and meet Debbie in person. Introduce yourself. Welcome her to Ossining. And we will be back next week at 8688 Spring Street for our legislative meeting. Right now, do we have a motion to, what?
Tuesday the 19th.
Oh, thank you, right,
Yes.
for Rosh Hashanah. Yes, Tuesday the 19th, 7:30. Thank you very much for that. What? Need the minute?
No.
And then, I'm sorry, we can.
No.
It is.
Oh, there is a.
We just weren't promoting it in the same way. And we still need a motion to go into executive session for discussion of personnel related to specific persons and matters of real property.
So move.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday, September 19th at the courthouse for our legislative meeting. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.